Washington Journal continues.
Each week in this segment of the Washington Journal, we take a look at a recent magazine piece. This week, J.C. Derrick of World Magazine joins us to talk about a series of reports in that magazine on how and why Hillary Clinton's State Department dragged its feet against Boko Haram in Africa. But J.C. Derrick, I want to first ask you about the news coming out of Nigeria yesterday on the leader of Boko Haram possibly being killed in a strike by the government. This is something that has been reported before, that he's been injured or killed before, to no avail. What are your thoughts on this latest report?
Well, I mean, it would be a significant development, but as you noted, it has been reported before, so I think it remains to be seen whether that will actually turn out to be the case or not. But certainly would be a very big news.
And this comes as John Kerry is visiting Nigeria this week.
It does, yeah. So that makes it significant. Things are constantly happening in Nigeria, and I think that's something a lot of people probably don't realize. A lot of it doesn't make it to the Western media. Yesterday, I got a text message from someone in Nigeria who reported on an attack that killed eight persons in a northern state. But a lot of times, those types of news items don't make it over here.
One thing that certainly did make it into Western media was the kidnapping in 2014 of 276 girls from a Christian school in Nigeria. You write in your magazine piece about that famous social media campaign and then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's reaction to that. She said at the time about the mass abduction that it was an act of terrorism by Boko Haram, that it merits the fullest possible response. But what had the Clinton State Department done about Boko Haram leading up to that point?
That's a great question. Just months before that, again, in talking about the things that don't make it to the Western media, just months before the kidnapping, in January of 2014, there had actually been an attack in the city of, or community of Baga that killed some 2,000 Nigerians. The eyes of the world were focused on France. It happened the same week as the Charlie Hebdo attacks. So it was another example of how things tend to proliferate in Nigeria while American interest is focused elsewhere. What we learned in our investigation is that there were a variety of ways in which the Clinton State Department, but even after that, where the U.S. government just has not really taken much of not only was it not a proactive approach against Boko Haram and stopping terrorism in Nigeria, but sort of a hands-off approach that has allowed it to really metastasize into what the Global Terrorism Index rates as the most deadly terrorist organization in the world.
And why that hands-off approach as you looked into it? What did you find?
Well, there are a variety. What our investigation really was focused on was trying to understand the policy. Back in 2012, my colleague Mindy Bells went and traveled through 5 northern states to really take a look at what was going on here with this terrorism, and she found that Boko Haram was just really operating unfettered growth in northern Nigeria. So we started trying to make sense of the policy. There were already calls at that point to designate Boko Haram a foreign terrorist organization, and we can talk about the details of that if you'd like. But for whatever reason, that there was some pushback within the State Department. So there was this hands-off approach, and so what we set out to find was why, and what we learned was that the CIA, the Pentagon, the FBI, I spoke with General Carter Ham, at that time the commander of AFRICOM in Africa, and all of them were unified in the need for designating Boko Haram a foreign terrorist organization, which really is just a first step in the response to a terrorist threat. Since 1997, there have been 72 FTO designations issued by the Secretary of State, an average of almost 4 per year. And this is really the only one where there was just complete inaction for a prolonged period of time while the threat grew.
The cover story in World Magazine, Clinton Inc. Did the State Department downplay terror attacks to protect the Family Foundation? What links did you find to the Clinton Family Foundation?
Well, so we started with the FTO designation, and once we learned that there was almost unanimous opinion that this non-policy was a bad policy, what we started looking into was why, and what we found was really three possible explanations You had one would be the desire for political change. The current president ran 3 times and lost, and he threatened violence after he lost the 3rd time to Goodluck Jonathan in 2011. There was a lot of violence after that, and so the desire for political change certainly would be one motivating factor. The desire for investors, we can get into that more about that, but those who would be seeking investors don't want U.S. investigators searching through corrupt financial flows in Nigeria, and then also those who deal in illicit oil. And what all 3 of those reasons have in common is that in each area, in each case, you had people who are associates, longtime associates, and large donors to the Clinton Foundation.
J.C. Derrick is our guest of World Magazine. We're talking about his recent pieces this summer about Clinton Inc. is the headline on the June piece. If you want to call in, phone numbers: Republicans 202-748-8001, Democrats 202-748-8000, Independents 202-748-8002. Chadwick's up first. Denver, Colorado, line for Republicans. Chadwick, good morning.
Hello. Hello, I'm in Denver, and these are actions that plague the whole continent over there. That is one reason why they haven't had a successful government, is because of corruption. And that is just on a major scale. This is just one of the serious issues to plague an official ever. And I don't think this is something that can be overcome politically. I mean, the ramifications of this are just, seriously, we're talking about effects to African Americans. This is just continuing to suppress the whole continent, keeping everybody corrupt over there. So she's not helping, anything anywhere. And we definitely don't need that over here, and I just want to hear you gentlemen's opinion if this is something that can be overcame.
J.C. Derrick.
Yeah, I think that's a common concern. He mentioned the fact that corruption is rampant in Africa. It is. Nigeria specifically has a reputation as one of the more corrupt countries in the world. But I think that gets to the heart of sort of the problem that a lot of people have with this appearance, is that the very people who most people would want to separate themselves from have been linked to the Clintons through the Clinton State Department, through the Clinton Foundation. So,
and what were they doing with the Clinton Foundation? What were the donations for?
It varies. Some of them donated directly to Clinton campaigns. A Houston oilman named Cassie Lawal is an example of that. Gilbert Shiguri, who's been in the news recently, he donated between $1 and $5 million to the Clinton Foundation, but again has previous donations to that, and in 2009 actually pledged $1 billion to the Clinton Global Initiative. So it really runs the gamut in terms of what these donations were for. One other example would be there was a donation of Oando, is an indigenous oil company in Nigeria, the largest one in the country. And into 2014, that company pledged 1% of its future annual profits to the Clinton Foundation for an education program. So it really varies as to what they were involved in.
And what would be the benefit from the Clinton Foundation themselves to help out these individuals? Is it simply the donation money that you're saying in your story?
Well, I don't know if it's the Clinton Foundation necessarily. The Clinton Foundation would want donations, in terms of what the donors are wanting. What we've seen in recent reports, some of which have come out since our stories landed a couple months ago, is that people wanted access. And the AP just today had a new report showing that over half of the meetings that Secretary Clinton had while she was in office were with donors to the Clinton Foundation.
One of the other stories, the headlines on that story, fatal connections as the Clinton-led State Department dragged its feet against Boko Haram. Clinton Foundation donors made millions from Nigerian oil fields. J.C. Derrick, one of the authors on that story, our guest this morning. What sort of response did you get from the Clinton campaign or the Clinton Foundation?
They did not respond to our requests for comment. So that they have their own reasons for doing that, but we would have loved to have heard more about their perspective on these issues.
Can you tell us more about World Magazine?
World Magazine has been around for just over 30 years. Our print publication started in mid-1980s, and today we publish across 3 platforms, which are World Magazine, the publication you have there, and then also World Digital and World Radio.
J.C. Derrick taking your calls for the last half hour of our show. Warren is in Windsor Mill, Maryland, a Democrat. Warren, good morning.
Hello, good morning. How you all doing? I would just like to disagree with your guest. I don't think this has anything to do with donations. There's a lot of what you call corruption in Nigeria as a whole, and I don't see any relationship between donations and foreign intervention. The United States basically would not do anything. I don't think, whether there were donations or not, would never go into Nigeria to do anything with Boko Haram. They did not go into the neighboring country, Sierra Leone, where hundreds of thousands of people died. There was not one United States troop over there helping to free anybody over there. So for you guys to sit down here and say, oh, this is because of donations or not, it's just totally, missing. You just totally miss the internal, what you call the politics that's going on inside of that.
All right, Warren, let's let J.C. Derrick respond.
Sure. He does bring up a good point that the previous caller mentioned, which is corruption is a widespread problem. And so, again, these associations, part of the reason they're troubling is because it's hard to take money from Africa without it being tainted in some way. And so I think that's the problem that a lot of people have, is that it is so hard to figure out who's doing what and why. But, knowing what we know about many of these donors, it's fair to say that they don't necessarily have pure motives in their reasoning for donating money. They do see it as an investment. And in fact, one of the former ambassadors to Nigeria that I spoke with, William Twaddell, told me that in reference to Gilbert Shigori, the gentleman who's been in the news recently, I asked him, regardless of the policy, regardless of what actually happened, the policy that was implemented by the U.S. State Department, in regard to Gilbert Shigori, who he's known for some 20 years, would he have an interest in would he be trying to influence the policy? And he said, quote, he does nothing other than that. He said, I don't know exactly what he may have been doing with the Clinton Global Initiative, but he said it's exactly the kind of, quote, honeypot that Gilbert Shigori would be trying to take advantage of.
Is there a specific quid pro quo that you can point to in your stories?
No, we did not find a smoking gun that, an email from Gilbert Shigori to Hillary Clinton saying, please do X, Y, Z. And it's fair to note that when Gilbert Shigori was back in the news recently, he did say that he has not had any direct contact with former Secretary Clinton since 2006. So, he denies that there's anything to the allegations. But go ahead.
No, just taking your calls in this segment of the Washington Journal. One to give our viewers the numbers if they want to call in. 202-748-8001. Democrats, 202-748-8000. Independents, 202-748-8002. Barbara is in Martha's Vineyard. Line for Democrats.
Yes.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Hi. Okay. The greatest value the Washington Journal can do for the public is to give it the 101, the basic introductory facts in every and any topic, so people can really move up the ladder of understanding. Could the guest please tell us from his perspective and his individual knowledge, what is the purpose of the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative? How are they different? And also a second question would be, what was the situation in Nigeria before Secretary Clinton became the Secretary of State? What was the context there that she inherited and walked into? Thank you.
Thanks for the questions, Barbara.
Those are big questions, so I'll try to address those each. In terms of what was going on beforehand, Nigeria's had a tumultuous history, and Gilbert Shigori, the gentleman we've talked about, has had he was a top advisor to the dictator of Nigeria in the 1990s, Sani Abacha, who was proved to have stolen billions of dollars from his people, and Gilbert Shigori was one of his top advisors. There's been a series of presidents that have generally gone back and forth between a Muslim from the north and a Christian from the south. And in 2011, just to sort of fast forward to 2011 is really when things ramped up. Hillary Clinton Goodluck Jonathan, the new president of Nigeria, took over in 2010 after the previous president had died, and in 2011 he won re-election. So that's really where you saw this ramp up of terrorist activity. Going back to the conversation with General Carter Ham, he said that it was not top. Boko Haram activity was not at the top of his list of threats when he took over in March of 2011, but in August of 2011, Boko Haram carried out a terrorist attack, a bombing, a suicide bombing at the UN compound in Abuja. This marked a dramatic uptick in anything they had done previously. So the reason we've sort of picked up in the middle of Hillary Clinton's tenure is because that's really when Boko Haram expanded to become the threat that it's turned into today. And you have to also remember what else was going on in 2011, and that is that the fall of Libya. And there were weapons and in some cases mercenaries going all over Africa, and some of those did end up in Nigeria. So that's the reason we're focused on this time period, because this is when things really took a dramatic turn for the worse.
And the caller also wanted to know about the purpose of the Clinton Global Initiative, the Clinton Foundation around the world, but also what they were doing in Nigeria.
Right. Like I said, one of the initiatives that one of the donations was for an education program. At one point, the Clinton Foundation did have an office address on their tax return that was based in Nigeria. It's unclear exactly what the donations went for, and again, I think that's part of the problem, is that there's no outward activity in terms of a lot of programs, whether it be education or whatever these donations are going for. They just seem to disappear into the Clinton Foundation, and there's no specific instances that you can point to, this, and this is happening, and this is how things have changed. And I think that's part of the problem with the appearance of these donations, is that how much has actually been done is an open question.
And when you bring up the foreign terrorist organization labeling, are you saying that Hillary Clinton specifically refused to label Boko Haram an FTO?
That's a great question. It does ultimately land on the desk of the Secretary of State, and she's the one who would technically make the declaration. I mentioned since 1997 there's been 72 FTO designations, but obviously she is reliant upon those under her who are making these evaluations. And I mentioned the fact that we found that the FBI, the CIA, the Pentagon, and even the Counterterrorism Bureau within the State Department wanted the designation. The resistance was coming from the Africa Bureau, and exactly what all the reasons were there, is up for discussion. Certainly, there's a bit of turf war sometimes that can happen between different bureaus. But I did speak with multiple sources who watched these debates unfold in front of the secretary at high-level meetings at the State Department. So she was not unaware of what was going on or the arguments for and against. She just chose to side with those arguments against FTO designation. Until when? Well, throughout her tenure, and that's part of what I think some people forget. Starting in August 2011, and I spoke with the head of the Africa Bureau, Johnny Carson, and he said that FTO discussions actually began as early as 2010, but they really ramped up a lot. Calls from Capitol Hill, et cetera, after the UN bombing in 2011. But there was no. The decision remained sort of a wait-and-see approach throughout the Clinton tenure. So the FTO designation did not actually come until about 8 to 9 months into John Kerry's tenure as Secretary of State in November of 2013.
Appleton, Wisconsin is next. Paul is on our line for Democrats. Paul, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah, I find it kind of humorous that he's calling this the Clinton State Department. I was just wondering, did Condoleezza Rice State Department kill Osama bin Laden? No, he didn't, or no, she didn't. It took Barack Obama to get Osama bin Laden after 9/11, and that took how many years? 6 or 8 years for Barack Obama to get Osama bin Laden, and now you're going to start blaming Clinton State Department for this terrorist group in Africa? Give me a break.
J.C. Derrick.
I don't know that I have anything to add to that. I mean, I think, as I mentioned, we don't have necessarily a smoking gun that explains exactly what went down, but I think when you look at the fact pattern surrounding the FTO designation, it raises a lot of questions. And as I said earlier, it really becomes a question of why. Why was this decision made against the advice of the Pentagon, the FBI, the CIA, et cetera, et cetera? And I think those are questions that deserve answers.
Joe is on our line for Republicans, Dundalk, Maryland. Joe, good morning.
Good morning. The thing that I get with Mrs. Clinton is she always fails to do her job. And I think you're looking for something that she has done. I think you need to start looking for what she didn't do. To me, if you're Secretary of State, you have a job. You can't just sit around and ignore everything and pretend it's not happening. Isn't that illegal also?
J.C. Derrick, are you saying that she ignored and pretended Boko Haram wasn't happening?
No.
Were there other steps State Department was taking at the time?
Well, the State Department would say yes, but I think there's certainly question about exactly what has been happening. One of the common reasons why there hasn't been a more robust investigation is that, well, this organization just funds their activities by pillaging villages and robbing banks. Certainly there is an element of that that's going on, but it's important to remember, and we actually discovered in our investigation concrete evidence as early as 2012 that Boko Haram operatives were using online scamming, essentially blackmail, to route money through European banks to NGOs in northern Nigeria that were funneling the money to Boko Haram. So it's just factually incorrect to say that they're not using international banking systems, for example.
Let's go to Bosque, Glendale, Maryland, line for independence. Bosque, good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Excellent, go ahead.
Yeah, I do watch your program every morning, but for some reason, this guy you have in doesn't know anything about Nigeria. It's probably one of the worst guests that you ever brought in. Him linking the Clinton donation and the rest to Boko Haram, that's totally wrong. I'm so disappointed that most of these guys don't do their homework very well.
Bosque,
what
do you specifically disagree with? Where are you questioning?
Basically, for example, he said the last president of Nigeria, when he lost, the Nigerian president, when he lost the election, he threatened some violence, and it happened after that, and that was a lie.
The viewer's talking about, I believe, the
Muhammadu Buhari. No, he did threaten violence, and I'm not saying he ordered Boko Haram directly to do anything, but certainly his rhetoric leading up to the election regarding the results, if he lost, certainly did happen. And so whether he emboldened them with his rhetoric or whether there was some sort of direct communication is really inconsequential. The threats that he made did come to fruition.
Los Angeles, California is next. Carl is on our line for Democrats. Carl, good morning.
Yes, good morning to you all. First of all, I'd like to say I've been watching C-SPAN since the beginning, and I want people to understand this is a public channel. This is for the greater good, and it started off as a progressive channel. The people you have on now, it's disgusting. I mean, you seem biased now.
We started as a public service. We're trying to bring information and opinions from all sides here on C-SPAN.
No, I'm sorry, but that's not true. Especially when you have bias. I mean, this guy's a nervous Nelly. I mean, his lies are just ridiculous.
Carl, let's not insult our guest. We're trying to have a discussion about an article and an investigation that he did for World Magazine. But I'd encourage you to go back to our website, look at some of our other segments, and see if you can find bias in that. We're trying to bring you opinions from all sides. Gene is in Detroit, Michigan. Line for Democrats. Gene, good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to say I'm really disappointed with Republicans, and because listening to you all and listening to everything that's going on right now regarding Ms. Clinton and these bogus emails, this information was 2006, 2005. And now you hang on to this stuff and you bring it up during an election and you drip it. And it's basically a lot of innuendo. It's no facts. It's nothing tying thing to Secretary Clinton. Anyone could create this kind of garbage. It's so disappointing with Republicans. I don't understand it. If it was
JC, Derek, I'll give you a chance to talk more about World Magazine and
Sure.
what you do.
Yeah, World has been hard on both candidates. So we certainly have been equal opportunity criticizers of both candidates and their weak points. In terms of this particular investigation, as I mentioned, our interest in Nigeria really started, we do a lot with international religious freedom issues, and it really started, our interest in Nigeria started back in early 2012 when my colleague traveled to Nigeria and saw the results of what Boko Haram was doing. Since then, we have been on this story constantly, even before the 2012 election. We filed FOIA requests in early 2013, and the State Department only a couple of months ago, this spring, gave us the first 20 documents, and they're still looking for records responsive to our requests. So, to say it's tied into the election is just incorrect. We've been working on this information for more than 4 years.
So what's an investigation that you've done about about Republicans in both sides?
Well, for example, one of my colleagues, Jamie Dean, did a really good report on some of Donald Trump's dealings in Atlantic City. There's certainly some unanswered questions, and some would call it scandal that went on there in terms of the casinos that he operated there. So a few months ago, we had an investigative report on that.
The story is Clinton Inc. Did the State Department downplay terror attacks to protect the Family Foundation? It's in World Magazine. We're talking about it in our last segment, our weekly Spotlight on Magazine segment here on the Washington Journal. Terry's in Sebring, Florida. Republican. Terry, go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I watch you guys every day, and I thank God for World Magazine, Judicial Watch, all these companies, all these organizations that are nonprofit that get into the nuts and bolts of what's really going on. We have to look at the past. Okay, the past is, you can't get over that. So, everyone, they have a great argument. People of this country need to look and listen and realize that this is the most important election of our lifetime. So that's only my comment, and kudos to you, and, let's make America great again.
All right, we'll go to our line for independence. JD is in Tarrytown, New York. JD, good morning.
Hi. I was just wondering, for the education program, there's no evidence that there was any education program trying to be implemented. Like you said, there was an office in Nigeria. I mean, I was just wondering, is there really no evidence of a program trying to be initiated?
Well, that particular donation, I don't have the details right here in front of me, but that particular donation was for education programs in general. I don't know that it was specifically designed for a specific one program. It was just an education in general to boost education. But I think, I think the real question here, going back to the previous caller, she said that questions need to be answered. And again, one of our mottos at World Magazine is sensational facts, understated prose. We really try hard not to take the facts go any further than the facts allow. And so in this case, as I said, our real focus here has been the lingering questions surrounding the FTO designation, and then going further to asking, what reason, who could have possibly benefited from this policy?
So what would be the question specifically if you were able to have those questions answered from either the Clinton Foundation or the State Department?
Well, why accept donations in the first place from these people who are obviously tainted? And I don't mean that in a disparaging way. I mean, it's just a fact. Gilbert Shigori was proven to have, in a Swiss court, was proven to have aided and abetted Sani Abacha in the 1990s. He had to return $300 million in 2000. So, to say that it's a good idea to partner with him is just highly problematic. So I think that would be the main question, is why these donations were even accepted. And then to go further, what precisely did happen after the donations were received. According to I believe it's the Associated Press reported that only something like 7% of the total donations actually went to programs a lot of it went to this superstructure at the Clinton Foundation. So the specific programs, what is actually being accomplished, I think, is the biggest question for the Clinton Foundation.
And what would be your questions for the State Department?
For the State Department, I mean, really, I was able to ask my questions directly to Johnny Carson, who the ambassador, who is the former head of the Africa Bureau. He stands by the policy. He said that, based on the facts of the time, he thought that was appropriate. But again, there are three basic. I think it's important to remember there are three basic legal reasons for designating an FTO. A group has to be foreign, a group has to be engaged in terrorism, and a group has to be a threat to U.S. interests. And what we found was that there seemed to be a systematic effort to cover up any danger or threat to Americans. And as we reported in the story, the first one, that there was at least one American citizen that we verified was in the building at the time of the UN bombing. But you can go to the Department of Justice website and look at terrorist incident list, and she's not on there. And when I reached her by phone, she was willing to talk about Nigeria, but as soon as I brought up the bombing, she hung up on me.
Philip is in Burtonsville, Maryland, our line for Democrats. Philip, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call. I so much appreciate C-SPAN, and I listen to your commentary all the time. And I want to commend the gentleman who is standing out boldly to really attack Nigerian issues. I feel a little bit disappointed the way the United States has been treating Nigerians' issues, especially with the Boko Haram. Even at the time when the UN embassy was bombed by this Boko Haram, we all were yelling and crying, and with the support of the world, that at least the American government and also allied world would come to rescue Nigeria from that big mess. But suddenly, we all, all those outcries, suddenly it died down and there was no result. And Boko Haram, it seems to be operating in a more wider scope and also tied to ISIS. I'm a Nigerian. I'm proud of being a Nigerian, but I'm also a United citizen, and I believe that the United States and those allied world, they fail Nigeria in one way or the other. Thank you. I appreciate taking my call.
The caller makes a terrific point, and that's something that I think world is very proud of, the emphasis we have put on Nigeria, because a lot of people may not realize that it's the most populous country in Africa. It is the most oil-rich country in Africa. It's the biggest economy in Africa. It's the largest African trading partner with the U.S. It's very strategically important. And so to ignore what goes on there is I think, a grave mistake. We've just hired a full-time reporter based in Abuja to further our coverage of Nigeria. And again, just in terms of the scope of the problem we're talking about here, that really has not abated. Last year, Boko Haram was responsible for killing more than 10,000 people in Nigeria. You go back, and it has not always been this way. Go back to the UN bombing in 2011. That was the first suicide bombing that the country had ever experienced. But last year, there were 89. So clearly the problem is getting worse, and I think it's a fair question to ask what the U.S. is doing about it. On that note, let me just add one detail. There's been a lot of discussion about the Leahy Amendment, which, for those who may not realize, in a sense, it ties the U.S. hands, what they can do, who they can work with to make sure that these are not people who are perpetrating human rights abuses and things like that. But in 2014, Sarah Sewell at the State Department, she appeared before Congress and she testified that half of the Nigerian military is eligible to be vetted and approved to be worked with. But that, by and large, has not happened. We're nowhere near the half mark, but there's interest on Capitol Hill in calling more hearings to find out why this inaction among those that we can work with, because the U.S. certainly can do much more than it's doing.
And again, the news out of Nigeria today, Nigeria reporting yesterday that the leader of Boko Haram and several of his top commanders were killed or wounded in a military airstrike, just as Secretary of State John Kerry arrived in the West African nation with the message that military action alone won't break the terrorist group's grip on the region. Robert's been waiting in Portland, Oregon. Robert, go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I found it kind of ironic that Hillary would be out campaigning in behalf of the over 200 women that were kidnapped, and yet not label this a terrorist group. If you look at the Philippines, for example, every group imaginable that has done any kind of group activities, even remotely like this, has been labeled, including the New People's Army, the NPA. And they have very little to do with the United States or any issues here. So, and all around the world, you've got groups that have been labeled terrorist groups and on the watch list. And this particular group has been ignored. And I find it very political on her behalf. And I'll take your comment off the air. Thank you.
J.C. Derrick.
Yeah, that's certainly a fair point and exactly what we've been talking about today. I think it's important to understand the FTO designation is not just, oh, we give it a label and move on, but it legally has meaning, and there should be an effort. It puts teeth into U.S. efforts to combat a terrorist organization, specifically with military cooperation, sharing information, intelligence. But then number one would be tracking the funding and arms flows that allow these groups to do what they do.
And was that not done outside of the FTO designation especially after the incident that the viewer brings up, the kidnapping of those girls from the Christian school?
It wasn't, and there are several reasons for that. Number one is just there's the FTO designation provides legal clarity so that the intelligence and defense communities can do what they need to do. And in talking to Carter Ham, the general who was commander of AFRICOM, he said he really, really desperately wanted this Boko Haram needed what he called the full suite of U.S. tools. And it didn't have it, and it wasn't getting it, and didn't for 27 months after that UN bombing.
Will is in Memphis, Tennessee, an independent. Will, go ahead.
Yes, I'm an independent. I have my grandson here, and he's on the computer now, on the internet, researching Mr. Derrick and his relationship with the Republicans and Donald Trump. Ask Mr. Derrick, do you have any relationship at all? Because we're researching your world magazine now. At this moment, my grandson is. You said that you have critiqued both Democrats and Republicans. According to your publication, sir, and your background too, do you have any relationship with? And then I'm going to give you the answer.
Let's let J.C. Derrick answer your question if you want to talk about your work as a journalist. And
sure. Well, a World, like C-SPAN, is a nonprofit news organization that gets its funding from private sources. We have absolutely zero connection whatsoever to the Donald Trump campaign, and anyone who has read our publication would over a long period of time would recognize that, because we have been very open about criticizing him as well. So,
what are some other stories that you've worked on?
Some of the stories I've worked on, last year I worked on a story about the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. Again, that's one of our top issues is just covering what's going on around the globe regarding international religious freedom. And so USCIRF was going through a battle last year, a reauthorization battle. And so we pointed out some conflicts of interest and things going on that were helpful in moving that process forward.
And what's next for you, story-wise, for World Magazine?
I'm currently working on a profile about Ambassador David Saperstein, who is the ambassador at large for international religious freedom at the State Department. And the reason I'm reporting on him is because he has broad support from both the right and the left, have agreed that he's doing a phenomenal job. He played a role in helping get the genocide declaration in March, and has really done a variety of things to advance the cause of international religious freedom. So in this polarizing political atmosphere that we're in right now, it's worth calling out someone who, on behalf of the administration, is doing work that both sides agree is a good job.
J.C. Derrick, Washington Bureau Chief of World Magazine. You can see it online, world.wng.org. Appreciate your time this morning on the Washington Journal.
Thank you, John.
And that's going to do it for our show today. We'll see you right back here tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Eastern, 4 a.m. Pacific. In the meantime, have a great Wednesday.